Thank you, Diana. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. Diana, thank you for inviting me. I spoke to the alumni board at the end of last year, and they asked me to also come and speak to the alumni. I'm sorry that I can't be here for the whole meeting. UCT is part of the local network of universities, the 4 universities, and we each take a turn to host each other. And today UCT is hosting the other universities. And so it was kind of like, okay, you know when you have guests and you have to say, okay, just stay here for a bit. I'm going to quickly go and do something and I'll be back. So this is my quickly go and do something. But I didn't want to not use this opportunity to speak to the alumni. So thank you a lot. I'm talking about realizing our vision for transformation because in a way this is an ongoing vision for the university, is that we want to have a different ethos at the university. I don't necessarily want you to read through the whole paragraph. Oh, I'm not going to read it for you. You can read it. But people often ask, so what do we mean by transformation? And of course, for us, it's about looking at the ethos and the identity of the university and asking ourselves, is this a university where everybody feels a sense of belonging? And so that means we have to look not only at the numbers and the profiles of students and staff, the demographics, but we also have to look at the extent to which the space and the place that we inhabit actually reflect the multiplicity of cultures that we are in this country, and to what extent in our relationships we have with each other, is there discrimination, is there harassment? And so those are the multiple issues that we address in transformation. And of course, it's an ongoing endeavor, and every year we have a transformation report, and we report extensively on what we are doing at the university. But I thought, let me give you some highlights of what we've been doing. And I want to start by just emphasizing that we don't see transformation as something separate to the business of the university. The business of the university is teaching, it's research, it's social responsiveness. That's the 3 areas. If you speak to any university in the country, they'll say, this is what we are here to do. And so for us, transformation must be part of every aspect of the core business of the university. It cannot be a 4th additional add-on that we think about maybe when we have time. So, with that being said, we have a framework for transformation where we work across 6 different areas. It's important for us, like I said, that the place and the space that we are in reflect the multiplicity of cultures, languages, and identities that we have, whether it's about seeing yourself as a Black person, as a woman, as a queer woman, as a lesbian, as a transgendered person, as a person with disabilities, etc., etc. You should be able to see yourself reflected at the university. It's about not only recruiting staff that reflects the South African demographics, but it's also ensuring that they are supported and that they succeed. It's about having students, similarly, that reflects the demographics, but ensuring that they have a student experience that will enable them to succeed and go out there and, like you, become alumni with successful careers. So it means we have to have an inclusive teaching and learning environment, and especially with our research, we want to ensure that we have an engaged focus on our research. And then as I said, we want to ensure that we are a university where we address discrimination and harassment. So that's the context within which we work, but I wanted to just highlight a few of the areas that are areas where we feel we are making progress over the last 3 years. If you look at our student demographic profile, you'll see that we have a diverse student population. And that's a diverse population that we want to ensure that they have a student experience that will allow them to focus on their academics. And when you are struggling to get funding, when you are thinking about where am I going to sleep tonight, if you are stressed about not having accommodation, not having food, then it affects not only your experience of UCT, but actually your ability to succeed. And so a lot of the work that we've been doing over the last couple of years have been to ensure that. So we spend a lot of money on financial aid. You'll see there 1.2 billion was made available for student financial aid. So in other words, we ensure that students that do not have the ability to pay fees are supported, whether it's through linking them up through NSFAS or through our own UCT budget. We provide funding for both undergrad and postgraduate students, as well as the so-called missing middle students, students whose family income is between 350 and 600,000 a year. In terms of student accommodation, a couple of years ago, 2017, in particular, we realized that if we want to address the crisis that we've had in student accommodation that led to the student protest in 2016 in particular, we're going to have to make a plan. And one of the plans that we made was to lease accommodation off campus. So we know we're not really able to build more residences. We're building one now, which is probably our last one. Because as you know, Cape Town getting land to even buy is a problem. So we are with private developers, have been able to secure extra bed space, and that means that we don't have to sit in a situation where we have student protests as a result of lack of accommodation. Student mental health, when you stress, when you are under severe stress, you're seeing the impact in terms of student mental health. This is not a UCT problem. This is one of the things that we talked about in our meeting with the other 3 universities today. This is something that we talk about whenever we meet any other university in this world. Increasingly, students present with severe mental health problems. And in 2017, we adopted a new student mental health policy. And I don't want to go through all of the areas, but you'll see that one of the things that we thought about was, well, we are a university that has to provide mental health services to a large number of students, 28,000 students. You cannot have 4 psychologists to serve 28,000 students that are under severe pressure. So we thought, well, let's rethink this. Let's have a primary healthcare system in the way that we have a primary healthcare system in a South African context. Let's use that model and bring it onto campus. And so instead of having expensive private services or services that looks like your private services in terms of psychologists, we have social workers, we have psychiatric nurses, and that means we can make access more available, more widely available. So that's one of the major changes that we've done. And then the other big change is advocacy, strong focus on mental well-being through workshops, through training, through support groups, buddy system, and I think we're making progress. We still see students with problems coming to us, but I think when we started in 2017, it was a dark year for us in terms of students and the number of students who's taken their life in that year alone. We haven't seen that since, and I think just changing our mental health approach and the awareness is making a difference. Finally, the VC just talked about food security, and last year we had 600 students signing up. This year we're already at 1,500 students. I think it speaks to the problem that we have. And these are students that we now register, so we know that these are students that financially are from backgrounds where they actually are going hungry. So we have 1 meal a day. It costs 32 Rand to sponsor 1 student for 1 meal. And I'm saying that because I'm sitting here with our alumni who often ask, how can we support? And some of you are already supporting us, but this is the one program where you can make a decision that I want to support 1 student for 1 meal a day for the year, and it's going to make a difference for these students. In terms of our staff, we've been working very much on not just recruitment, but also on once we have staff here, how do we ensure that they progress, that we actually build the next generation of academics to ensure that we maintain our standards as a high-performing institution. And I would just want to focus on two programs. One is the Next Generation Professoriate. 45 members of that group. These are people that are sort of mid-career professionals. They are at the level of associate lecturer, and we support them through retreats, through mentorship, to get to their research profile to a point where they can apply for promotion. And an indicator of success for us is, in fact, promotion. So I've given you some stats there. You'll see we started the program in 2015, and so we don't really count those two there because we're thinking these are people that probably were going to succeed anyway. But then you look 2016, 2017, you see more and more people that are going through and that are successfully getting promoted. 10 in 2018, 9 in 2019 that went from the level of associate professor to professor. So we're very much getting there in terms of ensuring that our women, our black academics are on the road to becoming professors. The issue of gender-based violence is a cross-cutting issue. It's a problem on all of our campuses. It's a problem among students, it's a problem among staff, sexual harassment in particular. So last year, with the tragedy of losing one of our students, we put together a cross-functional task team on sexual and gender-based violence, and they're thinking all the time of how do we make sure that this campus is a more safe campus, and ensure that we have safety as a prime consideration for all of our students. It's looking at, are there programs in which we can educate in particular males, and we have a program on masculinities that we will drive this year. And then we also set up a specialized tribunal that's looking at sexual and gender-based violence, and that's the first one across all of the universities. And it's a specialized tribunal, specialized skills. The proctors that sit on the tribunal are people that understand sexual and gender-based violence. And we were able to deal with some of the backlogs, and we are addressing some of the cases that come through the system. So those are some of the I think the low-hanging fruit that we've been able to harness, in which I think we're making a difference for students and staff at the university. Diana asked me to also just briefly touch on the Institutional Reconciliation and Transformation Project. And I think it's a process that probably speaks to the fact that whilst on the one hand we're making strides, on the other hand we have a number of challenges that we are going to continue to address. But the IRTC came about as a result of the protest and the agreement between management and students to have a commission that's going to look at what has driven protest 2014, 2015, and maybe even in the years beyond that. What is it at the heart of the university that remains a problem? And it took us some time to get this going. 2017 was a lot about just getting our terms of reference and then finally agreeing with all of the stakeholders, because literally we included every single stakeholder. It was probably the most inclusive process on this campus. So whether it was student formations, SRC, workers, all of the staff bodies, management, deans, HODs, everybody came to this room and had this conversation and had to agree on terms of reference, had to agree on commissioners. The commission did the bulk of its work in 2018. It had various meetings across campus. It also had hearings. It wanted to understand what led to the protest on the one hand, and secondly, it wanted to understand the broader institutional culture on campus. It presented its report early last year, And as an executive, we had to provide a view to council. Now, this commission reported to council, and so it didn't report to us as the executive. And here, just some of the views of the executive, which is on the record. One is that it's an important data source for us as an executive to understand what's happening in our space. But we were concerned about the low levels of participation in the process. So whilst this is important data, not many people participated in the IRTC. And so we were concerned about the fact that it wasn't really able to foster the reconciliation that we were seeking. But nevertheless, we are committed to implementing the recommendations, and some of that work has already started before the Commission even commenced. But some recommendations were also based on inaccurate information. So, for example, the Commission asked that we reconsider the way in which we allocate students into residences, that we should do it on a random basis, and we've actually been doing that for a number of years. So there an action list of 19 items, and we're about to go and report to Council on progress against those items. Finally, we also did a survey last year as part of trying to understand what is happening on campus. And it's an inclusivity survey that looked at a range of issues such as recruitment, advancement and development, fitting in, bullying and harassment, dialogue, institutional belonging, emotional well-being, safety and discrimination. And it's a survey that says, on the one hand, staff at UCT is happy about a range of issues, but on the other hand, there's a range of issues that they're not happy about. Advancement and development, bullying and harassment is really an issue for us at the university, and discrimination. So it means that our work is cut out for us. This is not, an issue that's going to go off the agenda anytime soon if you look at that as a source of really what the university looks like. But it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity to understand where do we focus our work. And that's really the approach that we have from the executive. We had a strategic session on this yesterday, and we're really excited about how we use this opportunity to move the university forward. And then just ending on a positive note, we've been working with communities around also, how do we commit ourselves in terms of addressing some of the injustices of the past. You may have read about the Sutherland process, where we're working with the community of Sutherland to rebury remains that were unethically obtained. It is a process that we had to start with an apology, but we believe that actually we are restoring dignity to that community. So that has become a positive story. And then finally, I like to end off with this picture. Sometimes I start with it, but I think this is a good picture. The only university in Africa with an all-woman academic executive. I hear the VC says the only university in the world. So I'm sure VC, if you say it's the only university in the world, then I'm going to go with that. I'm going to change my slide and says the only university in the world. And I think that says something in the way in which this university takes transformation seriously, is that our leadership is a leadership that actually mirrors that commitment. So thank you again, Diana.